Hello, and welcome to the Your Food Matters podcast. I'm Dr. Sue Kleiner. I'm here with my wonderful friend and colleague, as always, Erik Bustillo.
Hey, Sue. Hey, everybody. Thanks for hopping in with us today.
Hey, Erik. So, if you've tuned in with us today, we are so excited to have you here. You can find us, of course, on all the podcast platforms. You can watch us as well as listen to us on the Move Nutrition Network YouTube channel. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please share us with your friends and your colleagues and hit that subscribe button. So today, we are really excited to have our first guest.
Yeah, Dr. Jamie Tartar. And she's a friend of mine. She lives in the South Florida area. She's one of the founders of the Society for Sports Neuroscience. Just such a smart person. So it's a conversation that I was really looking forward to having. So I'm glad that she's on here with us today.
So this is kind of part 2 from our original sleep episode. Now you're going to really hear it from the expert. So we are here today with our very first guest. I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Jamie Tartar. Jamie is chair of the Department of Psychology and Neuroscience at Nova Southeastern University. And Erik and I are going to let her introduce herself because she's really interesting. Welcome to our first guest podcast, Jamie.
Thanks, Sue. Thanks, Erik. I'm really excited to be here. It's a little bit intimidating to be the first guest, but I'll do my best. So I am a professor of neuroscience here at Nova Southeastern University, and my background is in stress, sleep, and human performance. And I think today sounds like we're gonna focus in on sleep.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, that'll be the main part of it. And I gotta let everybody know, if you haven't had the opportunity to meet Jamie in person in real life, I hope that you get the chance to, because she's awesome.
Lots of muscles, very intimidating is really what it is.
Very jacked, and yeah, eats all the protein, crushes CrossFit workouts all the time.
And could do a little stand up on the side if she ever felt like it.
Yeah, this whole teaching college.
Forget the side as her main thing.
Stand up.
So Jamie, again, welcome. Erik and I are thrilled to have you here. I'm actually going to let Erik tee off here with our questions around sleep. Our focus is, we did a whole sort of episode on sleep, and then we realized that we actually would love to have the expert here to answer a bunch of the questions that were submitted and we heard from listeners about. So that was our initiative. Let's ask the expert. So Erik, take us off.
For sure. Thank you, Sue. So lots of folks might not know this, but Jamie and I actually do a lot of workshops together. Me on the nutrition front and her on the sleep education front. Everyone knows that they have to sleep. And I don't think people know why they have to sleep. Because if you think of sleep, it's this weird thing where you just lay down and do nothing for X number of hours. So to kind of get us started, I wanted to ask, what is actually happening when we sleep? Why do we sleep? What does it do for us? Those things.
Yeah, it's completely overrated. And I feel like if you could just, knock that 8 hours out, you really just don't need it. It's just, big sleep propaganda coming out.
Big sleep and big pharma.
It's when the government downloads their instructions into your brain. I think I just started a real movement by accident, actually.
Yeah, if somebody edits that part, we're in trouble.
Yes,
I need my tinfoil hat now.
It's sort of one of those sort of strange questions, because we spend 7 to 9 hours completely unconscious, and it seems super bizarre. But you have to imagine, we've been doing this for about 300,000 years as humans. All animals sleep. And when we sleep, we're super vulnerable, right? You can imagine if you were any other animal, and throughout most of human history, when you're sleeping, this is a period where, man, you could get eaten. You're not hunting. You're really vulnerable to other people attacking you. And so the basic idea is if you didn't need it, we wouldn't do it, right? So if we as animals living on Earth just went unconscious and vulnerable for a certain period of time, and it wasn't important, this would be like the biggest mistake Mother Nature.
So you're kind of saying, like, evolutionarily, we would have adapted away from it if it
Right.
wasn't so important.
That's exactly right. And we see animals they have to sleep, and they tend to sleep when it's safest for them. And all kinds of things. It seems so passive. We go to sleep and we kind of time travel for a certain number of hours. But so many important things are happening, and it's not just that so many important things for our health and well-being are happening, but they're happening at really specific times. And that's why that duration of sleep is so important, because certain processes are happening in the beginning of sleep, and the timing of that sleep that matters. And those are different from the things that are happening in early morning sleep. So we could spend hours and hours, but we'll just hit kind of like the highlights. When you first go to sleep, especially for your audience, they might want to know, oh, what's one of the things that happens when I go to bed? Well, you want to be jacked, you're gonna have to sleep, because in that first part of the night we get this huge bolus of like growth hormone, and who doesn't want that, right? So that first part of the night really timed to the beginning of our sleep cycle, lots of growth hormone release. Lots of slow wave sleep. This is the stuff that, man, when you wake up in the morning and you just feel like you slept the sleep of the innocent, you can thank your slow wave sleep for that.
Ah.
So lots of that in the first. See, I mean, really, like your brain, if it's so slow, it's almost in a coma. It's so slow.
Wow.
So lots of slow wave sleep in the first part of the night. Our brain really just shuts itself down. It's a time where your brain's going to clean out some of those toxic waste products. Right? Our brain doesn't have a lymphatic system the way our periphery does. So it really needs that deep sleep, that time when it's doing nothing else, to get rid of like metabolic waste. A lot of that time is spent consolidating memories. And we sort of go through that, go really, really into this deep, deep sleep. You kind of come back up, go into, REM sleep. And we kind of do these cycles all night long. We get closer to morning, spend a lot more time in that rapid eye movement sleep. This is, you dream all night long, but rapid eye movement are those special dreams that they tend to be kind of scary and bizarre. And this is where your brain is going to spend some time, just processing emotions. We're really emotional animals. And we want to sort of process things that happened to us the day before and get ready to regulate our mood the next day. And we need some time to do that. And it turns out, sleep is a great opportunity for us. So you can kind of just get a glimpse at the idea that while it seems very passive, you sort of have to shut down your brain in order for it to do the things it needs to do to help you be functioning when you're awake.
Do we know if other animals go through the same process during sleep?
Yep, they do. All animals sleep, and all mammals. The platypus is kind of interesting as a transitional animal, but all animals, human and non-human animals, go through these different stages in the sense that they have both non-REM and REM sleep, and they transition back and forth between them.
Wow.
Except, because we're speciest, and we're like, oh, we're not like other animals, we're super special.
Yeah, right.
So we got to call it something else. So in non-human animals, we're gonna talk about REM sleep as paradoxical sleep, but it's basically
the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had heard even earthworms sleep.
Yeah. I mean, if you're alive, you pretty much have a period of quiescence.
Wow.
That your sleep will very closely mimic sleep.
So it really is that important.
Yeah, and it's maybe surprising, but some of the most amazing and a lot of the genetic work on sleep actually comes from Drosophila. So we use the fruit fly, as a model, one of our go-to models for sleep.
Wow.
Now, Jamie, I'm curious about something. So you said, obviously, we go through these different stages and whatnot.
I was lying.
So the growth hormone. Who invited her on this podcast?
Whose idea was this?
So when you mentioned the growth hormone release, now, does that happen just in that initial phase, or is that whenever someone goes back into the slow wave part of the sleep cycles?
Yeah, well, it's sort of interesting, and it really sort of speaks to, what we talk about as sort of circadian biology. We know that, our hypothalamus is sort of regulating pituitary release of different hormones at different times during the day, and a lot of those hormones are released. The hormone release is determined by that clock that lives in your hypothalamus, right? A very special clock. So when we go to sleep, it's not that it's the only time these hormones are released, or it's only, a certain time of day. It's not the only time these hormones are released, but there is the case where a lot of hormones are high at a certain time during the day, reach their peak levels, and they have a nadir at a certain time during the day. So for example, cortisol is really timed to be high when you're awake, when you wake up in the morning, right? We call it the cortisol awakening response. Growth hormone is a special hormone in that the biggest release, so they're released, pretty much throughout the day, but we get a large amount, what we talk about is sort of a bolus of growth hormone in the early part of the night. And then sort of on the flip side of that, if you want to talk about hypertrophy and like growth and working out, the other important hormone, I guess, to bring up would be testosterone, because it's also regulated along a circadian rhythm. But on the flip side, so you gotta get the whole thing. You can't cut the beginning because the growth hormone. You don't want to cut the end because it's really early morning sleep where we get a lot of testosterone release. So most of the testosterone release, about half of it is between hours 6 and 8 of sleep. So you get 8 hours of sleep, you get jacked is really what that is.
So people who, I mean, I've had clients over the years with sleep disruption where they'll sleep like 4 hours and then they wake up. And then they say, well, I'm awake now. I'm going to do 2-3 hours of work or whatever they do. Then they go back to sleep and they sleep another 3 or 4 hours. They've got that kind of schedule and they've kind of habituated to that. Do you go back into the slow wave sleep? I mean, do you go back into the cycle again, or is your circadian rhythm going to disrupt that because it still is 3 o'clock in the morning?
Right. And so we would say, going back to sleep for people who do that, it's better than not going back to sleep because, some sleep is better than no sleep. But we know the best thing is to get that continuous sleep because with each hour, that architecture of sleep is changing a little bit. With that's actually not unusual at all, especially as we get older. And I'm in my 40s, so I'm in this group. But when we get older, it's much more difficult for us to get into and stay in deep sleep. So that's that slow wave coma, like the sleep. My children children are very good at deep sleep. My children don't pay a mortgage. They don't have real stress in their life. they sleep the sleep of the innocent. so just biologically, as we get older, it's more difficult for us to get that really deep sort of coma-like sleep. And so because we get a lot of that sleep in the first few hours, the first 4 hours when we're getting the most slow wave sleep, as we get closer and closer to morning, we're switching from mostly slow wave sleep to REM sleep, which is a much lighter sleep. And because of that, as we get older, it's easier for us to wake up at night, and sometimes it's difficult to go back to bed. So you might notice that once you get into your mid-30s and in your 40s, you're waking up. Like my bladder wakes me up in ways now that it never used to, right? So we wake up much easier, and that transition back to sleep sometimes can be hard. And a lot of that is because we are adults and we have lots of stuff going on in our lives. And the minute we wake up, we start to think about these things. And it's difficult to go back to bed. And what I will say is that if you have this kind of waking, and this would be considered a form of insomnia usually, right? So insomnia is difficulty going to sleep, difficulty staying asleep, or waking up too early in the morning. And when somebody has that issue, it's sort of weird, but it's actually really easy to treat. It's one of the easiest things that we can treat in the field of sleep medicine. I know it's sort of shocking, but we live our whole lives like not sleeping well. And the best news is it's not a pharmacological treatment. So there's something called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. So CBTI, and it's extraordinarily effective at getting in there. You can't do it yourself because we are terrible. We're terrible at judging ourselves. But an expert can get in there, like really missile-like precision, help that person really retraining their brain to go back to sleep. right?
Wow.
Babies and little kids don't have insomnia. Your brain knows how to sleep. It just sometimes needs an expert, like a coach, to get in
Yeah.
there and
Yeah.
help it.
Are there any online programs that people can access for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I can put one in the chat later, or I can send you a link. But
Yeah.
usually they're psychologists, and their specialization is in something called cognitive behavioral therapy, and then you put like dash I for insomnia. But extraordinarily effective. And if you were going to train, for a marathon, right, or you're going to train for a weightlifting, you wouldn't think twice of hiring a coach, and
Right.
sleep, which is so exquisitely important for our health and well-being. It's I would really think of that as sleep coach. And sometimes the word psychologist like scares people, but you know get that
Yeah.
expert in there to help you.
Oh, I love it. Sleep coach.
So now I like that you brought up the that as we get older we sleep less essentially.
But we
Are
don't need
there
that.
other
That's
things? Correct. We still need the same amount. So hopefully that doesn't happen to everyone as they age. But it seems to be a bit of a trend, unfortunately, whether we choose it or not. Um, but are there other issues that happen as we age? Like anything else that you could think of as far as sleep is concerned? And also to kind of add to that, are there any differences as far as like sexes go, like male, female kind of thing, and sleep are concerned?
You're trying to get me in trouble. All right, look, I'm gonna say it. Biologically, women need a little bit more sleep than men, and I said what I said. All right, I'm not taking it back.
Hey, these are just the facts.
These are just, yeah. I mean, maybe like 15 minutes or so, but we're very metabolically complicated women, so we need a little bit more sleep than men.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
and
that when my husband gets up first, it's perfectly fine for me to say, I'm just going to stay in bed for a little while.
just tell them like it's biology,
Yeah,
buddy.
just biology.
Yeah, and the other time that really women, really want to pay attention, is menopause. It can really wreak havoc on women's sleep while they're going through menopause, and I think an understudied area of research. But that's a time where women tend to suffer with sleep-related issues.
And is it just symptomatic? A combination of all the changes happening?
Yeah, it's looks like a combination of just hormonal changes, getting hot, right? Like night sweats, and it's just a difficult transition in general. It kind of hits every system, and sleep is one of the systems that suffers a little bit as well. And then and then to your other question, Eric, as we age, one of the things we want to be really careful about is making sure that we do get enough sleep, because one of the things that happens when we sleep, we talked about your brain kind of cleaning itself. And some of those toxic proteins that are cleaned out are like, alpha-synuclein and beta amyloid, and these are proteins that associate with neurodegenerative disease.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to make sure that we're getting a lot of that deep sleep. We're really kind of being selfish about getting deep sleep, because it can be protective in the long run. And with older adults, we want to make sure that they are getting a lot of sleep, that we're promoting sleep in them, because it can help, with some of this, just general memory consolidation, neural processing during the day.
Years ago, there was this kind of, I don't know if it was a meme or a commentary among, in the science world, that lack of sleep was worse than smoking cigarettes as far as morbidity and mortality. I can't imagine that they're an equivalency, but so where does that stand?
I can't speak to like cigarettes necessarily. Everybody likes to compare things to cigarettes, though.
I know.
Everything is like as compared to smoking, but a lifetime of poor sleep is very closely associated with just all cause mortality.
Mm,
Nothing good happens when you take sleep away.
right.
And we can, I have a colleague who likes to talk about sleep as the Swiss Army knife of health, and I couldn't agree with that term more. Every system in your body is affected by sleep, for good or bad, right? You take sleep away, you're not going to do well. Give people sleep, promote sleep, they do better, and that includes, sleep extension. We're looking in our lab, and other labs have looked at very similar things. We're even looking at extending sleep for gut microbiome health. We saw that people who didn't sleep well had decreased gut microbiome richness and diversity. And so now we're trying. I'm in the business of doing mean things to people, like taking sleep away and giving stress. So we're trying to do something nice this time. So we're giving them more sleep, and we're hoping to see. We don't have the data yet. You have to come back in a year. And
yeah, for sure.
We can look at a difference in hopefully promoting gut microbiome richness and diversity.
Wow, but on the flip side, does gut microbiome diversity impact sleep?
That's the question, because our other study, it was just correlational. We don't know the direction. We suspect it's sleep. It could be a little bit of both. So that's why this one we're applying sleep extension and hoping to see a difference from baseline.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that, and I forgot to mention this earlier, but one of the awesome things about Jamie is that she is one of the founders, and in my opinion, the head honcho of the Society for Sports Neuroscience. So maybe we'll be seeing something about this study in one of the upcoming conferences. Maybe not next year, but the year after.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that, Erik.
Yeah, those are awesome conferences. One of these days, I'll make it all the way across the country for that one.
Yeah, please. You can be our guest.
Oh, thank you. So, then thinking about things we can do, right? I mean, we talked about, you already said, get a sleep coach if you have insomnia and any form of insomnia. But as we, know that aging is upon us, it always is, or we're coming into a stressful time. Like sometimes that there's maybe, like I hear from my daughter, it's fourth quarter, Mom. It's just a really stressful time at work. If you know that things are going to happen that could be sleep disruptors and that you don't have a control over that event happening, certainly, aging,
Yeah.
what kinds of things could we do in a preventative way or a preparation way so that we go into those times in our lives with kind of a toolkit?
Yeah, I think a sleep toolkit is like a great way of addressing that. If you're in one of those phases of life, we all go through periods of stress and times where we're maybe not sleeping as well. And I would say I wouldn't get too worried about that as long as you're getting it right most of the time. I eat okay most of the time, and once in a while, I have a cheeseburger and I'm like that, I'm getting it right 90% of the time. So if it's just a weekend or a night here or there, I wouldn't worry about it at all. If as we age and just in life in general, we just want to think about sleep hygiene in general. And one of the things that your brain wants to do, so as a neuroscientist, we think of the brain as a prediction machine. Your brain all day long is just trying to predict what's going to happen. And it really is comforted by knowing what's going to happen next. So predictability is it's like a warm blanket for your brain, right? A sense of control and predictability. And when you take those things away, brain doesn't do so well, right? It's your little prediction machine. And sleep and going to bed is one of those times where your brain would really love to know what's going to happen next and a routine. So we put little kids on routines for sleep. We know it works. We have the same brain. It works. It's a little bit more mature. But giving yourself a sleep schedule, a wind down routine, is absolutely an amazing way to drift off at night. If you have a little kid, you'll give them like dinner and then a tubby and then a story and then they go to bed. And it could be very similar. You want to put something in there that's going to calm down your nervous system. So you could, taking a warm bath, it can help to drop the core body temperature. That helps you go to bed as well. You get your core body temperature warm, and then it drops when you get out of the bath. Also has that secondary effect of calming down the nervous system. Like some chamomile tea. Do not read the entire internet before you go to bed. Put it away, and really be selfish about those sort of calming activities, whether it's yoga, deep breathing, and trying to do the same thing every night, letting your brain know, oh, this is going to happen next. Go to bed when you're starting to feel tired. And then this is going to sound counterintuitive, but if you're in bed and you can't fall asleep, get out of bed, right? Because you don't want your brain to associate bed with not sleeping. So one of the things we say, is your bed's only for sleeping, but you can have sex in your bed because that's weird if you don't, right? So those two things you can do in your bed, but in
Not
general,
the kitchen?
in the kitchen, you could do it if you want to be, or you could just be, just change it up a little bit. Or you could turn over to your partner and be like, "Oh, I heard this podcast, and they said if we're not asleep, we need to be having sex." Like you can spin this up.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Perfect.
So it's the idea that you want your brain to associate bed with sleep, and so that's the only thing other than that's the only thing you should be doing in bed. Is the bed is for sleep.
So we should not be reading in bed?
You should. I say that, but I have a colleague who's a sleep scientist, and she reads in bed, but she understands. For her, if you can read in bed and you're asleep in about 15 to 20 minutes, that's probably okay. If you're like me, you will finish the entire book, and then it's going to be 4 a.m. and you're
Yeah.
So you sort of know thyself, but you want to be asleep within 30 minutes.
Okay.
Once you're in bed, that's sort of the strategy that you want to use. The other thing we want to be careful about at night are just what are termed sort of ambient stressors. And one of the biggest things that we want to be careful about is light at night, especially short wavelength like blue light or white light. If you get towards the reds, that's probably fine. But those blue lights will activate these like special cells in your retina, and it'll suppress melatonin. So we want that natural melatonin level to come up, and so light suppresses that at night. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, so that
does.
gets us over to kind of you waded into nutrition there without knowing it.
Oh, no.
So we're going to ask you about melatonin because that's
I'm a big fan of melatonin.
So tell us the story.
So melatonin is one of those things where I think it's confusing because you walk into like CVS or Walgreens and you look on the shelf for sleep and you see there's melatonin everywhere.
Right, right.
10 milligrams, 20 milligrams of melatonin. But the reality is you don't have to go to CVS or Walgreens to buy it because your brain is producing it for free. So you don't really have to do anything. And I think what a lot of people don't necessarily get is that a biologically relevant dose of melatonin is about 2 milligrams. So it's not one of these things where, if 2 is good, 50 is better. So it's going to be back to this thing that is terrible for me. But, as we get older, we're not as good at producing our own melatonin. And that's where maybe a supplement can definitely be helpful, for older adults. Like maybe a 1 to 2 milligram supplement.
So it's fully absorbed?
Yeah, I mean, I would be careful, like with any supplement. The thing that I would want to do is check on like labdoor.com and just make sure that the melatonin product that you're buying is what you think it is. But that's probably the biggest concern with buying melatonin on Amazon or wherever you like to buy it.
So you said labdoor.com?
Yeah, I think that's the site you recommend, Erik, right?
It is, yeah. So there's labdoor.com and even checking something like if it has the informed choice label on it. The nice thing about Labdoor is they'll test specific companies and then they'll put it on their website. But there's been cases of with melatonin in particular where the label said one amount and what was found in that amount was like exponentially more kind of thing, which we want transparency behind what we're taking. So Labdoor helps with that for sure.
Right. Yeah. Oh, excellent.
And we're not sponsored by them.
So and then we do hear that if you take melatonin, you shouldn't take it ongoing, that it should be a short period of time. Is that true?
Melatonin, it's different than other hormone systems in your body. A lot of the hormone systems that we work with in endocrinology work on kind of a feedback loop. So they sort of shut themselves. Melatonin, the signal for melatonin is light. So when short light wavelength light hits the retina at night, it's either going to suppress melatonin. In the absence of short wavelength light, we'll have normal natural melatonin release. There doesn't appear to be health consequences to taking melatonin long term. If you look at the literature, but most people just don't need to take it
Right.
if you just have good sleep hygiene, and that means really just being in dim light at night is all you need. I tend to have a circadian rhythm where I'm just genetically a night owl, and society does not encourage that. So, once in a while, if I need to shift back my circadian rhythm, I'll take melatonin for a few days to sort of help to phase shift my circadian rhythm. I think where melatonin really shines is when you're traveling, especially when you're traveling west to east.
Right.
It's almost impossible for your brain to go to sleep when it's not time. East to west is easy. We can stay awake.
Right.
West to east is really difficult.
No, it's really hard.
That's where, melatonin shines, is to help reset a circadian rhythm. But it's not, and I would actually go as far as saying it's not just that melatonin isn't dangerous. Melatonin is an ancient hormone, and melatonin's been on Earth for 3 billion years. And is a pleiotropic molecule in us, so it is, anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory. It's working within our systems in lots of ways that help our immune system, help our overall well-being. So when we have light at night, and if we look at people who shift work, who work at night in the light, and then they're home sleeping in the light, they have all kinds of health consequences really due to melatonin suppression.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah.
It is fascinating.
Antioxidant, lots of
Right. Oh, wow.
And that's not to scare anybody. That's just to say, sleep in the dark. And even if you're a shift worker and you're coming home and it's your nighttime, sleep in the dark. And we really just need that time where we are not suppressing melatonin when we're asleep.
Yeah. And I mean, I think these are just such good points. So we might not think about these things sometimes, but I did want to ask you a few questions, and I want to.
And I do want to say, like, I don't have any. I'm always careful as a scientist. People like, oh, she's working for big melatonin. I'm not a shill. But if you have that shill money, please send it my way. I'd love.
There you go.
We'll see if we can get you a sponsor. But I did want to be respectful of your time. So I wanted to just kind of ask almost like maybe like lightning round style. Like, I mean, feel free to go as in-depth as you want or keep it as short as you want with a few questions that I wanted to ask you regarding sleep. Now, is there such thing as too much sleep?
Oh, that's so complicated. We see health consequences to people who oversleep, hypersomnia. But people who oversleep tend to be people who are sick. So there is a relationship between hypersomnia and poor health outcomes, but the hypersomnia is probably associated with the idea that they were fighting something going on in the body.
Gotcha.
If I locked you in a room for 7 months and I watched your sleep, once you pay off your sleep debt, which you're going to do, people don't physiologically oversleep when they're left on their their own free running rhythm. Does that make sense?
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah, but so you mentioned sleep debt. Is sleep debt actually a thing, and can you make up for lost sleep?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say most people are walking around with some sleep debt. We're not usually getting the amount of sleep we need every night. So most people tend to pay that off on like Saturday morning or Sunday morning. And it's better than not doing it. You'll get those cognitive processes back online when we do look at studies where they give people 6 hours in time in bed or 4 hours time in bed. They don't do well, day after day. But then once you once you pay off your sleep debt, those cognitive processes and motion processes come back online. What you don't get back is the metabolic cost, sort of that brain cleaning that you didn't do. So there is a metabolic cost to pay that you don't really pay off, but you're cognitively, emotionally kind of be back online.
Okay, I gotcha. And that's super interesting, but it also makes sense. Now, you mentioned earlier that 6 to 8 hours is where that testosterone kind of flourishes. So is that where the 7.5 to 9 hours, like, do you really need that much? And can you be fine on just 5 hours of sleep? Like, what's going on there?
There are some people that are called, they're just short sleepers genetically. They don't need as much sleep. It's really rare. It's like being 7 feet tall. so don't assume that you're one of those people.
Yeah.
Most of us, mortals, need somewhere between 7 and 9. to function well. And it's really not negotiable. You can't train yourself to get less. Like I couldn't train myself to live off 1,500 calories a day. My body would just adapt to that, and I wouldn't have any like weight loss. It's the same with that. You can't train physiology like that, a basic process. So how the amount of sleep you need, and whether or not you're a lark or a night owl, that's due to mostly the genes you've inherited. These canonical clock genes. You inherited those from your parents. So blame your mom, is I guess what I'm saying. You inherited these genes from your parents, and for now, there's not much we can do to genetically adjust you.
Wow.
Yeah, genetics. It's such a crazy thing.
Well, I think we're going to wind down. I know, Erik, you've got sort of a last cool final question.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask, that I think could be fun to hear your answer here. If you could eat a meal with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be, and what would you eat?
All right, I'm going to answer honestly, and it's not a scientific answer. I would, if I could have a meal with anybody, dead or alive, it would be my mom. My mom died young, and she had 5 children, and I have my kids, and I never really got to talk to her as an adult and talk to her about the things that I appreciated as a kid. And I don't think we had those honest conversations, the kind of conversations I think I could have now, because when I was younger, I sort of maybe took advantage of her being my mom. So I would just love to sit down to a spaghetti dinner and talk to her as a mom, and as an adult. And it's the honest, not scientific response.
For sure. No,
That's
we want
real.
honesty, and I appreciate you sharing that. So thank you for that. I have a similar answer to mine. So for sure. So thanks for sharing that. I think that's a beautiful thing.
Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Jamie. This has really been, it has been enlightening. I probably have 20 more questions that have come to mind listening to you talk, and so and certainly a year from now to hear the end of the conclusions from your research on the biome. That would be very cool. So thanks again, taking a little time out in your busy schedule, and I look
Seriously.
forward to seeing you, probably for me at ISSN. It's always fun to see you there.
I'll be there. Thank you, guys are so cool. I'm so happy to have been here. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. I appreciate you a bunch. I think more than you probably know. So thanks for hopping on with us.
Thanks a lot, Jamie.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
All right, everyone. You just listened to an awesome episode. We had Dr. Jamie Tartar on, and she just gave so many cool little nuggets of information. She's so funny, so entertaining. I had some good takeaways from what she mentioned. She talked a little bit about hormones, just really making some strong points as to why we should be getting good sleep. I think one of my favorite things that she said was to have some kind of a routine. A lot of times we're looking for a quick fix or what can I take? But having like a sleep routine and that sleep hygiene was an important part. So I really enjoyed that. And Sue, I know that there was a couple of things that you got out of that you really enjoyed too.
Yeah, well, you and I have been coaches in our careers, and Jamie said get a sleep coach if you suffer from insomnia. And she went through, that insomnia isn't just not sleeping at all, but it is sleep disturbances. There can be many types of insomnia. That there is a kind of, she said, a really good fix, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And you can look at online CBT-I or -insomnia, and you should be able to find a sleep coach. And through, habitual training, they may be able to identify much faster than you can and better what is disrupting your sleep. So I just thought that was an amazing tip.
Yeah, agreed. Just a wealth of information and also entertaining. So I know that her being one of the founders of the Society for Sports Neuroscience, I know that that's the handle on Instagram, Society for Sports Neuroscience, on Instagram, where she could be found. But yeah, just a wealth of information. And I know that the annual conference for her organization is in February in South Florida. But yeah, just so many takeaways, and it was a wonderful chat with her and
It
with you.
was great. So thank you all for joining us for our Your Food Matters podcast. Again, if you've enjoyed our podcast, please share us with your friends and colleagues, and we'll be seeing you again. Take care, Erik.
See you guys soon. Bye, Sue.
Bye.